powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, this is Football at 4.
And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you locally by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destination all season long. Wild Wild West, Tropicana, Harrah's Resort, Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. The Inside the Birds podcast is up and reacting to the Eagles' loss to the New York Giants as the Eagles fall to 5-7 on the season. Let's bring Geoff Mosher into the conversation and get his reaction as we look back at the Eagles' kind of sloppy, ugly loss. Mosher, this reminds me a lot of the time they went down to Miami and just threw up a stinker, and we thought that the whole season was over and that was it, and then they kind of got hot after that. But this was one of those times where you expected them to win, and we saw them not show up in that moment. So what did we learn about them with that loss yesterday?
Yeah, actually, I was thinking of the 2008 season. You remember the Eagles were like 5-1, and then they beat the Cardinals on Thanksgiving after Donovan had got benched, and they were 6-5-1. And then they won like 2 or 3 straight games, played a really bad Washington team on the road, and just, it's a division game. They lost 10-3 in that game and fell to 8-6-1, and everybody said, oh, this team stinks. They're terrible. They're not what we thought they were. And then, of course, they went and won the last 2 games, or the last game of the year, got to 9-6-1, and then made it into the, that was the 44-6 game. So it reminded me of that in a little bit. Look, the Eagles lost, Mike, because they turned the ball over 4 times. Jalen Reagor dropped a clear pass that either sets up a touchdown or is a touchdown. And they just did not have a very good, who's the slot receiver dropped the touchdown?
Ward.
Greg Ward. They made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
So I know there's a lot of stuff out there. They didn't run the ball enough. My God, they ran for 200 yards. I mean, how much more can you run? They didn't blitz enough. They held the Giants to 13 points. To me, this is not about coaching. It's not about Howie Roseman's roster either. I mean, there's plenty of time for that. But it's about execution. And they went on the road and played a division game, and they brought their C-plus game from top to bottom because there's a lot of different culprits. And that's what happens when you do that, when you're not that great of a team. The Ravens had 4 interceptions last night, and they won. They beat Cleveland because the Ravens are a better team than the Eagles. And the Ravens aren't going to win that game either all the time, but they played well enough to win. The Eagles cannot do that and expect to win most times.
Well, I think that's what we found out, right? When you are expected to win a game, now the expectations are on you. You can't go in with a C-plus game.
Right.
If you have the expectations to beat a bad team on the road where you're a favorite, you need to put that team away. Now, you hung around. I'll give them credit for – this is where, Reagor has the 2 drops. That highlights everything, and we'll get into him in a little bit. But I thought Hurts played maybe his worst game that I can remember. He might have had a worse one last year. It's not popping out to me. But what I was impressed with is even though he played his worst game, he had 2 bullets left in the gun, and he took 2 shots and still was hanging in there. And as bad as they played to get to where they were, when they were in the big moment, he didn't wilt. And that's something that I think should be taken from this moment is even when he wasn't playing his best, he still made 2 big throws.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I think if you're looking to, and I'm not saying you're purposely looking, but if you're trying to find a silver lining in that, that's fair. I made this comparison in the offseason about how Roseman's kind of off year and how everybody started to get back on he's not doing so bad because he got Devontae Smith and made these great trades. But he's also part of the faction that, got the head coach fired and the franchise quarterback ran out of town. So I used to say, you can't light a house on fire, then get credit for putting the fire out, when you're the one who lit the house on fire. So yes, Jalen Hurts did save some good throws there for the end, but clearly, when you look at the people who are most responsible for this loss, he's on that list.
Oh,
I mean, he, as you mentioned, he made some terrible decisions that the weird thing is he doesn't normally put the ball in harm's way. And what you have to wonder is this just a bad game, which it could very well be, or
very
is it
uncharacteristic.
very
uncharacteristic. 3 interceptions especially the horrible decision-making. Those are all uncharacteristic moments for him.
Right. So there's two that are just bad throws, and to me, one that's just a bad decision. Though the bad decision is it was a bad throw as well. But I mean, you can just right before the halftime, you got a field goal there, throw the ball out of bounds, you're already rolled out of the pocket, throw the ball out of bounds, kick the field goal, get the ball back at the start of the second half. That's just a bad decision that he doesn't usually make. Now, the two other interceptions that are a little bit troubling as far as what's to come is that they came while he was inside the pocket and trying to push the ball downfield, which we've seen him struggling with a little bit more since the Denver game when he seemed really good at it. Since then, he's had some timing and some accuracy issues, and I would say accuracy issues related to timing. The one that he threw to Jalen Reagor, he just held on to the ball too long and he doesn't have, we know this, he doesn't zip the ball down the field with great arm strength. So he let that thing hang up there. The safety recovers, picks it off pretty easily. And then obviously the one to Quez Watkins, which may have been a little bit on Quez for stopping the route. But those were plays where he was in the pocket, and you started to see it last week with the Saints. The way they attack the pass rush with him is that they're trying to keep him in the pocket to make throws. I think even the Giants said that after the game, that they were trying to let him beat them with their arm. And so that's kind of the red flag, is that if you can figure out ways to keep Jalen in the pocket, of course he's going to break one or two regardless, but if he's throwing in the pocket and you feel like you had an advantage there, that's not good for the Eagles.
Right, absolutely. And, he just, for whatever reason, everybody has that day where they just don't have it. I thought that was certainly Jalen's day yesterday. He did not have it. You mentioned
absolutely
just take the field goal. He for whatever reason, he tries to make some throws. Now, that being said, they get the touchdown with Scott called back due to a hold.
Yep.
The throw to Ward drops it. I mean, all these
Dallas
things.
Goedert dropped the pass,
Dallas
too.
Goedert drops a pass. All these things could have changed the complexion of his game and where this game goes. That being said, the offense just didn't have it. What'd you think of John Gannon's defense yesterday?
I didn't have too many issues with it. They didn't get beat with very many big plays. They didn't have to blitz. I thought they tackled well at the intermediary level, aside from one or two plays. The tight end screen to Ingram early, that's kind of that first 15 scripted plays. I'm sure that's not on tape anywhere. It was well designed. And then Saquon had a 32-yard run that I think if I remember, one person kind of either missed a tackle or wasn't in their gap correctly, and that'll happen. But other than that, did they force turnovers? No, and you'd like to be able to do that. But as we know, this team can be very streaky with the turnover play. Darius Slay was brilliant again. Had a pass breakup in the end zone, which was really key at the time. And Derek Barnett played a good game. Think about this. This is really key for such a tight game it was. The Giants got down to the Eagles' 26-yard line. I think this is second quarter, maybe third. And Barnett gets a tackle for a loss. And then on the very next play, he draws a holding on the left tackle. So that was 15 yards in back-to-back plays that pushed the Giants out of field goal. Well, they pushed him further back, and then Gano missed the field goal. So that was pretty big there for Derek Barnett, who doesn't get a whole lot of praise, and deservedly so, but he did a nice job. So I have no qualms with the defense.
Yeah, I thought, I guess the question on the defense kind of stems from, are they, is John Gannon finding his way, or is it just another example of them playing against a bad quarterback? I mean, why has the defense kind of settled in and found itself here, and can they be counted on?
Well, they played a lot of man, which is something that they didn't do in the first 5 or 6 weeks when they were something like 95% zone, so they're not as predictable. They are doing some more pre- and post-snap movement. You saw Alex Singleton kind of creeping up toward the line of scrimmage like he was going to blitz because he's been blitzing more lately, and then at the snap he would drop into his zone. So that's kind of.
I thought Singleton played pretty well yesterday.
Yeah, he had 14. I said this on the pregame show. Some people disagree with me, but that's fine. Reasonable people can disagree. I didn't think there was going to be a big drop-off from Davion Taylor to Alex Singleton. They're different types of guys. Singleton is not the athlete that Davion Taylor is. I mean, few people are. Davion Taylor is a souped-up athlete. But Singleton's a smart linebacker. He knows where to be. He's a good sideline-to-sideline linebacker. And he had, I think he had 3 tackles for a loss and a pass breakup. So he did fine. I thought he was good.
Yeah, no, there was a play where it looked like it was going to be a pass, but there was like a quarterback draw. He didn't take the bait on the receiver. He read and let the receiver pass him and went up and made the tackle. Had a couple tackles on those delays. I thought he played pretty well. That being said, let's get to Reagor. He is a microcosm of the issues that people have with this organization, I feel like, okay? For the people who say it's all Howie's fault, he's a horrible drafter, taking him in that spot is obviously a mistake. But it also is compounded, Geoff, by not admitting the mistake and continuously playing him. I'm not suggesting that they're saying to throw him the ball more or he has to play more. But at what point do you just say, look, this guy's just not good enough. We made a mistake.
Well, I'm not going to be the hypocrite to say that because I have said this team needs, and I think that game proved it, this team still needs another option in the passing game when teams start to really scheme away Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert. And, Mike, I would buy the argument if I felt somebody else was stepping in and playing well in the few snaps they get, but Greg Ward dropped the touchdown too.
Which is uncharacteristic of him, though, to be fair.
Sure, it's uncharacteristic, but the bottom line is he dropped it.
Oh, absolutely.
So, if you want to talk uncharacteristic, people are killing Reagor for saying that his drops are uncharacteristic. I don't know what people have been watching, but he had 2 drops in his pro career, 100 or 90 some odd targets going into the game. So he has 4 now, right? And drops were not his thing. We could talk about route running. You could talk about how there's no chemistry between him and Hurts. You could talk about the punt returns, but he is not someone who is constantly dropping the ball. Now, he also is not constantly targeted this year, so who knows? So my point is
he has 200 yards in 11 games this year. 200.
Right.
Travis Fulgham had 152 yards in one game last year, and he's walking on the streets.
Well, Jalen Reagor had a 55-yard touchdown last year. That doesn't mean anything to me. I mean,
I'm just saying, honestly, it just shows you the nature of how 200 yards in 200. It's almost impossible.
Yeah. No, Mike. I mean, I'll go to my grave saying this. I think Jalen Reagor is better than what you're seeing. If there was a different environment, different quarterback, I'm not saying he'd be perfect, but you absolutely saw Nelson Aguilar have 2 really awful years.
Yeah.
And once they changed things around him, the quarterback, and then, of course, he moved into the slot, which may be what they may have to go out and try to get a guy like Allen Robinson. Don't draft another wide receiver in the first or second round. Sign a proven talent like Allen Robinson, move Devontae Smith to your Z receiver, and put Jalen Reagor in the slot and see what happens here at quarterback. I don't know if you're going to have a different one next year, but maybe that's the antidote, or maybe he just has to go somewhere else to change of scenery because the speed's there.
Do you think he plays?
He definitely has it.
Do you think he plays to the speed that he? What's he like? He was supposedly the fastest receiver in the class or one of the top. He doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't feel like he has this explosion or this elite speed.
I think you've seen it more when they scheme the way to get, like, for example, in Detroit, they gave him the ball in a couple of end arounds. He had 10 yards and he had 12 yards. When they get him the ball across the middle, he can turn and run up, which is very rare. He does, but he just does not get the ball in space. It's sideline all the time. He doesn't get, to me, in this offense. And I'm not saying that's a play calling thing. I'm saying that the ball doesn't find him when he is open across the middle. It's either going somewhere else or it's a run or something's going on.
It just, when you're the other players, and this is where sometimes, if I'm on that team and I have a guy who has 200 total yards receiving and the coach says, hey, he gives us the best chance to win, you almost feel like, my God, I'm Greg Ward. I know I had a drop, so it's a tough day to use him as an example. But I played last year and had 500 yards in half the games. Like, when you put me out there, I'm way more productive than this guy is.
Yeah, but, it's tough. Last year was a totally different offense. You know how much they're running here. There's just not that many passes. The quarterback himself tends to lock onto the first guy. I mean, there's a whole lot that's going into this. Then I'm not trying to make excuses. Reagor has to own those drops. He dropped them. They should have been caught.
Oh, by the way, I thought he did.
Any differently.
I thought he did at least a good job of facing the music.
Yeah, absolutely he did. Yeah. It reminded me of when Greg Lewis fumbled the punt returns against the Packers in, 2007 or something like that. And, He came out to the media, and remember, Greg Lewis was not a punt returner. He was put in a bad spot by Andy Reid, but he came out and faced the music on it.
Well, apparently Rager's not a punt returner either.
Nothing's going right for him. It really isn't.
No, and apparently he's not a kickoff returner.
He's getting – I think people are killing him for the punt that got down to the 1, but the ball was a line drive that hit the ground at the 4. He did the right thing there.
Yeah, he was in a tough spot in that one. It's just, when he catches the punt, it's like it doesn't feel like he's got that explosion. It's like this guy's got a full head of steam, and he doesn't seem like he's moving anywhere for a guy who's billed to be a 4.3 40 guy.
Yeah. Listen, he needs a lot of work, and it's unfortunate. And but again, Quez Watkins the ball was thrown to him, and it looked to me, I'm not saying it was a perfect pass, and it may have been picked off anyway, but it looked like he stopped in the route. He got a little contact from Darnay Holmes, and he kind of stopped. And he made one catch as well. Rager, by the way, made a nice catch in the game. People forget.
He did. I brought that up earlier.
Just like Quez Watkins.
Right, I brought that up earlier, that he made this like circus type where he had to change his body direction. He's fallen to the ground. I mean, he did make that catch that brought him down to the 2 early in the game.
Well, that's sort of my long view point, is that I think if you look over the last 4 weeks, that Watkins has played more snaps than Jalen Rager, and he's not been any more productive than Jalen has. So I think that just shows you that this thing is more systemic to the offense and not just about one individual who just can't produce.
What did the Giants do to get Goddard and Smith out of the game yesterday? Were they taking them out of the game? Did Hurts miss them?
A little bit of both. There was at the end of the game a lot of what they call 2-man coverage, which is 2 deep safeties and man underneath. And when you get that, you get a little. They were able to get like kind of an extra body at scrimmage, or at least right away, on Goddard or Smith. And sometimes they had a linebacker drop, like a linebacker would show blitz but then drop to be with the corner on Goddard. So they definitely did things to scheme those guys, not on every single play, clearly, but on the few times that the Eagles pass. Certainly they had, on third down especially, they tried to take those 2 guys out of the game and did, for the most part, they did a good job of that.
What did the offense – do you feel that the offense missed Jordan Howard yesterday?
It's hard to say that when they ran for 200 yards and they both of the running backs, Sanders and Scott, average over 6 yards a carry. Now, Jordan Howard has not put the ball on the ground yet, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I don't recall that doesn't mean
it's right. Yeah, it doesn't mean he was going to go all year without fumbling, but clearly his ball security helps them. But other than that, I honestly don't. I've heard people say today they didn't run enough, and you can't have it both ways.
When you run for 200+ yards and only score 7 points and you're on the losing end, what does that say about this offense?
There you go. Thank you. Running the ball more was going to get you another field goal maybe? So I don't know what running the ball more was going to do for them. You can't have it, but you can't say, look, it's an evaluation year for the quarterback. You give him as much running as possible, but then, you got to start to see him throw the ball and then try to run the ball 95% of the time. That's not evaluating. First of all, nobody can do that. Secondly, you're not getting any evaluation on anything. And third, you weren't scoring any points by running the ball as much as you already did. So at some point, you have to throw the ball in the NFL.
Yeah. The frustrating, I feel like to not be able to get Goddard involved, 3 targets, that's the guy. I mean, I get it, Smith, you miss him. They do whatever they do. Goddard has to be there. You just sign this guy. He's your guy, right? I mean, he's the chain mover. He's the guy that when, hey, we're running. And Sirianni talked, hey, we're doing a good job. He did admit today, our drop-back passing game needs some help, but we're doing a good job in the play action. And when you're doing play action, that tight end is a big part of it. For 3 targets, I mean, he's the guy that really I scratch my head on today.
Yeah, if we're going to be nitpicky about the coach and what can the coach do a little bit better, even though the coach did not lose them this game, I feel like this game in particular, they did not, and maybe it's because Goddard's had some good games and he's been in a role now, but they didn't kind of work a play to him like the Giants did on that wacky screen to the flea flicker screen to Evan Ingram, right? They haven't really schemed up a specific play that's meant for Dallas Goedert, which they could have done more. But again, you can scheme it up. If the quarterback doesn't throw it, doesn't throw it. Or if it's not there, it's not there.
Yeah, and keep in mind, like we mentioned, they did run the ball for a touchdown. Boston Scott called back. I thought, it was a big moment in the game. Kelsey went out. He missed a big chunk of time, and their offense was bupkis during that time. Now, Herbig wasn't dog meat, but he had two huge penalties that negated 2 big plays.
Yeah, the one negated the touchdown. The other one negated like a 17-yard run by Hurts, designed run. So that was costly. That was costly.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking about the whole Minshew thing because of the ankle injury now? I mean, is this going to be – this is what I dreaded, by the way. I wanted Jalen to stay healthy all year long because what's going to happen is if Minshew has to play, this city is going to go bonkers if he wins the game, and it's going to be like Civil War, and it's going to be, bad.
Yeah, how realistic do you think – like, do you think Hurts is banged up enough where he might not play?
I think the fact that they were mentioning it today and said that he's a little gives you enough – because they, ordinarily he's been pretty tight-lipped about the injuries, but he also knows what he's doing up there. So maybe Nick Sirianni was, trying to send a false flag to Washington.
Well, I mean, you already had people. I had people. Oh, if the backup played, they would have won. And I'm thinking maybe they would have. You can't say on Hurts's worst day that you have to go to the backup and say, well, you would have won that game. Maybe you would have. Likely. I mean, Minshew's not a bad player, but the problem is. Now the goalposts have been moved of, hey, this is an evaluation year. It doesn't matter if they make the play. Well, you get that taste, and now it's, now I want to win.
It absolutely is. You can't satisfy everybody all the time, right?
No.
I mean, it's –
Now, that's interesting because you bringing that up, like when I listened to – we had Sirianni. We played the presser last hour, and I heard him say, Jalen, but yada, yada, and I didn't even think anything of it. I mean – did they mention anything yet last night after the game? I didn't even hear him say anything last night.
No, but it was clear. I think they said he had the ankle taped, and I think Jalen was asked about it, and he didn't really want to talk about it too much. So the fact that he finished the game makes me think maybe he's probably not that bad, but, we saw McNabb play throw 4 touchdowns on a broken ankle.
Right.
And then all of a sudden the next day, the swelling comes.
And are we sure that Kelsey's going to play next week? I mean, he did come back in the game, but.
Yeah, and then, of course, Jack Driscoll is out now on IR for the second time, which means he's done for the year, and they don't have Brandon Brooks ready to come back yet. So who plays right guard?
For a week.
Probably, it could be Sua Opeta. Yeah, for a week probably. It could be Sua Opeta. I mean, at this
that's
point,
if Kelsey's out, you're saying.
No, right guard. Driscoll is going to be out.
Yeah,
He's
but Herbig would play right guard.
Oh, Herbig. All right, I forgot about that. Yeah. So there you go. Nate Herbig.
I mean, unless Kelsey can't play.
Kelsey can't play, right. Then you have a real problem at right guard.
Yeah, because, and that's the thing is, now Driscoll and Johnson, they started to get going. Mailata, by the way, my God, he was crushing people. It's a bit, like, you watch a game and you're watching skill players. You ever just watch him?
Yes.
It's unbelievable. He pulled yesterday. He crushed a defensive tackle. He made the tackle look like it was a safety. That's how big of a man he is.
There are sometimes, Mike, I think, like, the two guys who I feel like he can project, if he continues, he has to get a lot better, and he's good, but he has to get better. But
very wrong.
When you think of someone that big and that athletic, the guys that come to my mind are Orlando Pace and Jonathan Ogden, guys who were not just really great left tackles because they were, good, big, huge men, but they were also some of the best and most fluid athletes at the position. Yeah. And you could throw Jason Peters in there. He was a great athlete too. But those guys, especially in the run game, they can get out to that second level and it looks like a Corvette through traffic, man. For someone that big, that's unnatural.
Well, I'll tell you what, he's fun to watch. Just zone in on him for a series. Mm-hmm. If you watch a game at home and you're not like zone it, watch the offensive line and just watch Mailata. He just manhandles people. Now, does he get beat every once in a while? Like, his footwork is still not perfect, but holy mackerel. That's an unbelievable story right there.
It really is.
All right, so you mentioned Driscoll. Brooks, they said after the bye they're going to reevaluate him, right?
Yep.
Sanders Wednesday, Howard Wednesday, Kelsey Wednesday. So we'll see. We should have more information when you're back on Wednesday, but it's a big week. You cannot fall asleep at the wheel against this Jets team.
That's a good point. Somebody was asking me about that, and I said also, but a friend of mine was like, well, they should beat the Jets by 20. And I'm like, yeah, they should, maybe that's possible, but you also can't. The Eagles aren't good enough to where you should assume that they should beat anybody on the road by 20. I'm not saying they can't do it. They did to Denver, but they're not that team that they just go and beat anybody by 20 on the road.
It was frustrating because if they win the game yesterday, correct me if I'm wrong, they would have been the 7 seed today.
Today, yeah,
Right.
probably. Right, yeah.
And they would only have been a game and a half behind Dallas, and Dallas has all these COVID problems. I think the
Right.
loss really took the pressure off Dallas. They're going to be in this wild card thing, you would imagine, and probably until up to the Dallas game. I mean,
I would think so, yeah.
I go back to that game in Miami. They had lost 3 in a row. They went to 5-7 with that loss. And I remember the three of us were doing the show, and it was 2 against 1. And I said, guys, they play the Giants, the Washington, the schedule's terrible. And they ended up 9-7 winning the division. I feel like this might be I think they'll lose another game in here somewhere.
Well, that's the problem, because right now, if you're talking about the 3 wild card spots, you feel pretty confident that the 49ers and the Rams are going to get 2 of the 3. And then it all comes down to the Vikings, who can be very streaky, but they
just lost Dalvin Cook for a while.
They do. They have 2 games left against the Bears, who are pretty bad. So, I don't know. That's the team to me that's going to be the biggest hurdle, because they're a game behind the Vikings right now, correct?
They are a half a game.
A half a game.
Remember, the Eagles still have their bye coming up.
I don't know who the Vikings play when the Eagles have their bye. I think it's one of those games against the Bears. So if they win that, then that's when you start to get into the yikes,
week 14.
Kind of territory.
Well, they play the Lions this week, and then they play the Steelers, and then they play the Bears, the Rams, the Packers, and the Bears.
And that Steelers game is interesting, because the Steelers they can either hang with you one week, or they can look awful like they just looked.
And by the way,
Bengals.
that's a Thursday night game.
Oh, that's a great Thursday night game. All right. Yeah. Well, we'll all be glued into that one.
Yep. And then you got the Rams and Packers in there. So those are 2 tough spots for them. And then you got the Bears twice, like you said. So, yeah, I mean, that loss yesterday definitely made it to where your margin of error has certainly slimmed with only 5 games left in the season. I'm sure you're looking forward to the end of this season, right?
Well, I don't like to rush the end of the season. I'm looking forward to this stretch here. I mean, we got a lot of division games, and we'll see how it goes.
It's tough. You're doing how many podcasts a week? You're doing live shows. I mean, you get to that point where you're like, I need this to end.
I don't sleep much.
Listen to the Inside the Birds podcast, your source for Eagles intel. Get it wherever you listen to your podcast, InsideTheBirds.com. Jeff's back on Wednesday. Andrew's here tomorrow, and we'll start to obviously take a look at what went wrong, what's going to go forward. They play the Jets this week. Maybe Joe Flacco will be at quarterback. I doubt it, though, because Zach Wilson did play yesterday, so I would imagine he's back for good. All right, Moshe, good to see you, man.
All right, Mike, take care.
There's Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, which you should listen to each and every Monday. And, of course, he's here on a Mosher Monday edition of Football at 4.